Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here together at the Court of Fontaine to announce that I am broke. That's because a certain character just came out, Rant. She's pretty fun, she's pretty cool. I've been testing her. This is my favorite team here that I'm currently running with Furina, Nahida and Beidou. If you're wondering why I'm using the Cinnabar Spindle on her currently, that's because I was swapping weapons around for a little bit. The point of this video is, I found that Furina was my favorite way to run Rant. And I was thinking, recently there's been a lot of discussion about who really the truly best character in Genshin Impact is. Some people say it's Bennett, some people say it's Xingqiu, some people say it's Nahida or Kazuha. In my opinion, Furina is without a doubt the single best character in the whole game. Now, in case you don't know, you currently still have about 14 days left to decide whether or not you want to get Furina. If you don't have her yet, I highly recommend you get her. Play the characters that you want to play first and foremost, of course. But if you are at all interested in making your account stronger, there is no better investment than Furina. I'm telling you this, believe me. And we're gonna go through the reasons. Okay, so first of all, what does Furina even do? Well, I assume most people know this already, but she can summon a bunch of companions that shoot at enemies. And as they attack them, they will drain your party's HP in order to empower their attacks. You can see this here. Once my enemies attack, my HP is being drained. And what that does is it has synergy with her burst. Because when she uses her elemental burst, what it essentially does, it will spawn these bubbles around your screen. It makes your screen look prettier, first of all. But secondly, and most importantly, it basically buffs the damage that your entire team deals. And the more your HP drains, or the more your HP gets filled up, or aka healed, while the burst is active, the higher the damage increase becomes. Furina also has a secondary elemental skill. If you use your charge attack, she transforms her 3 companions into this one singular flower-looking thing that will restore HP instead of dealing damage. In most cases this is not super useful, but it is nice to have for overworld and stuff, and occasionally in the Spiral Abyss in order to restore some more HP before you head on to the next floor, if you've got enough time, for example. So to summarize, we can say that Furina is an off-field damage dealer because she can deal damage from her creatures off-screen, and she's also a damage buffer. Let's have a look at Bennett, right? Bennett is often being used in the meta as an attack buffer. The good thing about Bennett is that he doesn't need a lot of investment. You basically only need to give him as high a base attack as possible. So you want to get him to level 90. You want to put the strongest base attack weapon on him, and then essentially he buffs your attack a crap load. And it is a really good buff. It does have a couple of downsides though, because your character is only being buffed while the character remains within this circle of effect here, this area of effect. That's why we call it circle impact, right? Now, on many characters this is totally fine. On other characters, not so much. Rant, for example, is not super suitable for Bennett because she has lots of mobility in her kit, so it's easy to actually leave Bennett's circle and then not profit from the attack buff anymore. It also depends on what team or what enemy team you're fighting on the Abyss. For example, is there a lot of movement? Are there overloaded reactions happening? Basically, whenever you leave the attack buff circle, you lose the attack buff. That's the second point I want to get into. So Bennett boosts your damage, that's true, but the way in which he does so is by boosting your attack with his burst, and not necessarily every character is going to benefit from that, right? Neuvillette is often referred to as the best DPS unit in the game, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, but Neuvillette's damage scales highly off his HP, which Bennett does not buff in the slightest. And then on top of all of that, also, Bennett only buffs the active character standing in his field. So unless your off-field DPS unit snapshots like Xiangling with a Pyronado, then they don't even benefit from the attack buff, only the active character. So if you have, for example, a Yae Miko, well, while she's standing in Bennett's buff, she gains the attack buff and does more damage, but chances are you use her as an off-fielder, and so as an off-fielder she doesn't benefit from his attack buff either. Okay, so let's next look at Yelan, because Yelan is An even more similar character to Furina than Bennett is. Like Bennett, she also only buffs the active character, but she doesn't buff the attack value. Instead, Yelan just straight up buffs the entire damage that you deal. So not a specific attribute, but the damage, which is more universal. So that means that even characters who don't scale fully off attack, or not with attack at all, characters like Nuvilette again, like Noelle, Furina herself, or Nahida, who scales with Elemental Mastery, all of their damage, no matter what it scales with, is boosted because Yelan boosts damage. But like Bennett, she also only boosts the active character's damage. Now, like Furina, Yelan also does off-field damage. You can see it right here. If I switch to Chlorant and keep attacking, she still applies her Hydro Element with her attacks. So Yelan's Elemental Burst summons this little die, and it'll shoot out Hydro attacks as coordinated attacks as you fight your enemies. But the downside is that when you're not attacking anyone, or not attacking anything in the moment, or maybe you're not using normal attacks, maybe you're using plunging attacks or something differently, right? Yelan doesn't actually apply any damage from her attacks, because her burst only does damage when the active character uses a normal attack. But even if you are using a character that uses normal attacks, let's say for whatever reason you are currently on Nahida and you use her elemental burst, in that time you're not using normal attacks, so there's no damage coming off of Yelan, right? Stuff like that, so there will always be a little bit of downtime where Yelan's burst, even though it's up, it's not actually doing any damage. If we go back to Furina, Furina has none of these issues, which is what makes her an insanely broken unit. So let's bring it all back to Furina again, right? Let's get her up there. Unlike characters like Yelan or Bennett, she doesn't just buff the active character's damage, she buffs your entire team's damage, which is insane. Unlike buffers like Goro or Bennett, she doesn't just buff a single attribute, or unlike someone like Genshin, she doesn't just buff a specific type of movement or a specific type of attack, in Genshin's case normal attacks. No, she just buffs all the damage that you deal, and not just for the active character but for the entire party. Unlike characters like Beidou or Yelan or Xingqiu, she's also able to apply her elemental skill damage off-field no matter what your active character does. Whether they're normal attacking, plunging attacking, even when they're within elemental burst animations and not doing anything, Furina's units will still keep attacking the enemy, so there's no downside on that damage whatsoever. What's more, her signature weapon, it looks quite awesome, but it's actually not a huge increase over other options that are available to her. With some characters there's a big difference between the signature and other options. With Furina that's not the case. I have the Festering Desire here from the old Dragonspine event. It's a really good weapon on her. Provides energy recharge and elemental skill damage, right? But there are other options as well that you can go with if you don't have this old weapon here. If you have other 5-star weapons like the Jade Cutter. Jade Cutter is a really good option on her because of the crit rate and because of the HP increase, which Furina loves, of course. You can also go with the Dog Cant to boost her damage. I heard there's a weapon, the Pipe, which is similar to the Festering Desire, which you can get, which is really good. Or even just ER weapons, like Sacrificial Sword, or even better, Favonius Sword. What Favonius Sword will allow you to do is, it focuses heavily on energy recharge, but you can always get more damage through her artifacts instead. There's a little trade-off that you can do, but then also the elemental particles that you create through Favonius Sword actually allow you to run less ER, which means that you can then build a bit more damage through your artifacts again as well, through substats for example. So there are a ton of options that you can go with as Furina's weapons. You will pretty much always want to run Golden Troop, which is just by far her best artifact set. It boosts her elemental skill damage and it boosts it even more if she's off the field. What's more with Furina is that she is one of very, very few characters in the game, actually the only character I can think of off the top of my head, who not only has a really good C1 but a really, really good C2 as well. There are loads of characters, right? Like for example Hu Tao, who has a really good C1. Or characters like Raiden, who has a really, really good C2. But there are very few characters who have a really good C1 and then an absolutely broken C2 on top of it, right? Her C1 makes it so that the maximum damage increase from her burst is even higher, and C2 will make it so you will require far less healing in order to achieve the maximum damage bonus. Furina C2 is arguably the best constellation in the whole game because it makes it a lot easier to boost the entire damage of your team. When people compare Furina to other units like Xingqiu or Bennett, they will often say Xingqiu is a better unit or Bennett is a better unit. What they actually mean to say, I hope so at least, because only then does it make even the slightest bit of sense, what they actually mean to say is that Xingqiu is a better unit or Bennett is a better unit than Furina at equal investment. I guess that goes without saying, but it is worth saying every once in a while, because if we're just saying that Bennett is a better unit than Furina, what we're actually saying is that Bennett is a better unit than C6 Furina. And no matter how good Xingqiu or Bennett are, they don't even begin to touch C6 Furina. So what people actually mean to say is that a C0 or a C1 Furina, which is about the equal investment required for a C6 Xingqiu or a C6 Bennett, at that point Xingqiu and Bennett are better. That's what they actually mean. But even then I disagree. There is no unit in the game whose absence I feel as strongly as Furina whenever I'm not running her. And there is no unit that is as versatile that I want to run in as many teams as Furina. I mean, at this point we have like close to 80 characters or something, or maybe even more than that now, I don't exactly know. And I have most of them, and I gotta say, at least 80% of characters, at least 80% of teams that I can conceive of, I want to run Furina in those teams. Straight up. And in 80 to 90% of those teams, Furina is actually the best in slot unit as well. She is insanely versatile, she is insanely strong. She buffs your whole team's damage, no matter what attribute they scale with, not just the active character, not just within a certain field. She applies a lot of elemental skill damage off field, no matter what you do, whether you're attacking, not attacking. And unlike other units like Fischl or Chiori for example, or Kokomi, who have a static pet that they summon who remains in place, that they, if they're Fischl they can resummon it, if they're Kokomi they can resummon it, if they're Chiori they can actually not do that, but Furina doesn't even need to worry about it because they follow her around. The quality of life on Furina is absolutely insane, the damage she provides is really good, the buffing she provides is second to none. On top of everything, she can even walk on water indefinitely because her skill has a shorter cooldown than a duration. She's absolutely broken, and she's a cutie as well. Maybe one day I'm using Plunge Navia in the Abyss, Furina carries it. Maybe one day I'm using Cloran, Furina low-key carries it, right? Because her damage increase is absolutely insane. Physical damage, Furina buffs it. Electro damage, Furina buffs it, right? Plunging attack damage, Furina buffs it. It's actually insane, while buffing everyone else on the team, like Nahida, like Chiori, like Beidou. The only thing she doesn't buff is reaction damage. But even in a Hyper Bloom team, right? You have Kuki, for example, who does the elemental reaction trigger off-field, right? So you want to make sure that even in a team like that, you want to use an on-fielder who has good amounts of damage. Furina, well, she's able to buff her damage, and including her elemental burst damage, which is really crucial. Not everyone can do that. Okay, gamers, I think it's about time we... Look at that, man. I just resummoned her skill. She just keeps walking in water. Like I said, you want to run, really, if you have Furina, at least that's the case with me. I pretty much want to run her on nearly every team, because in 80 to 90% of teams she's a really good option, and in 80 to 90% of those teams she's actually the best in slot option. So she is absolutely insane. I will, at equal investment, I will put her above Xingqiu, I will put her above Bennett, I will put her above Yelan, I will put her above Nahida, I will put her above Kazuha, because no other character's absence in a team do I feel as strongly as Furina's, and because no other unit do I want to use in as many teams as Furina. But yeah, that's my reason why you should maybe potentially, if you're up for it, consider pulling Furina. Like I said, you have 2 weeks. If you don't have her yet, or if you don't have her constellations yet, if you are willing to invest a little bit in the game, if you're a Dolphin maybe, Her constellations are highly worth it. She is worth every penny. You have about 2 more weeks, so consider it. Of course, you don't have to. Play whoever you want. First and foremost, fun is the most important aspect with most games anyway. But like I said, if you are at all interested in making your account stronger, Furina is the best character to pull because she is the best unit in the game. Anyway, that's it, gamers. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video.